Did you know that overthinking can reduce your creativity by a staggering 25%? That's right. Research shows that when we get stuck in our heads, we lose our ability to think freely. This is a big problem for anyone who wants to be a great storyteller. In fact, many successful authors, like Stephen King and J.K. Rowling, have shared how letting go of overthinking helped them create their best work. King once said, "You can't get it right if you don't get it written." This highlights a shocking truth. Worrying too much about the details can actually ruin a story. So, what does overthinking do to your storytelling? It blocks your creativity, suffocates your plot, and creates distance between you and your audience. In this article, we'll explore the surprising ways overthinking sabotages your storytelling journey. You'll learn strategies to break free from this mental trap and unleash your creativity. Get ready to discover how to stop overthinking and start crafting stories that truly connect with your readers. The magic of storytelling awaits. Let's dive in. Chapter 1: The Brain Freeze. How overthinking blocks creativity. You've probably heard the phrase, analysis paralysis. It's when you think so much about something that you can't move forward. For storytellers, this is a creativity killer. According to a study by the American Psychological Association, overthinking reduces problem-solving abilities by up to 25%. This is because overanalyzing takes you out of a creative mindset and pushes you into a logical one. Creativity thrives on spontaneity, not careful planning. Think about it, some of the best stories were created on a whim. J.K. Rowling famously said she came up with the idea for Harry Potter while sitting on a delayed train. She didn't obsess over every detail in that moment, she let the idea flow. That initial burst of creativity was pure. If she had overthought it, we might never have known about the boy who lived. Strategy time: stop the brain freeze by setting time limits for brainstorming. Give yourself 15-20 minutes to think through an idea, then move on. This forces your brain to be efficient and creative instead of getting stuck in endless analysis. Another tip is to take short breaks when you're stuck. A study in Scientific American shows that giving your mind a rest, even for a few minutes, can boost creative thinking. Your brain needs downtime to make creative connections. Chapter 2: The Perfection Trap. When every detail suffocates your story. Perfectionism is a common problem for storytellers. You want every word to be just right. But the truth is, perfection doesn't exist, and the pursuit of it will crush your story's natural flow. In fact, a study by the University of London found that perfectionists are 26% more likely to procrastinate. Why? Because they're afraid of making mistakes. Author Anne Lamott, in her book Bird by Bird, emphasizes the importance of writing shitty first drafts. She explains that this is where the magic happens, not in the polished, perfect version, but in the messy, raw one. Letting go of perfection allows your ideas to breathe. Instead of aiming for perfection, focus on clarity and emotion. A good story doesn't need to be perfect, it needs to resonate with your audience. You can always revise later. Start by telling the story the way you feel it. A good strategy is the 80% rule. Aim to get your story 80% of the way there before going back to edit. This keeps the process moving forward without getting stuck in the details. Another technique is the two-pass editing method. In the first pass, focus only on big picture elements, like story structure and character development. Don't worry about grammar or small mistakes. On the second pass, you can refine those smaller details. This keeps you from falling into the perfection trap early on. Chapter 3: Lost in the Plot. How overthinking destroys story structure. A great story doesn't need to be complicated. In fact, many of the best stories have simple plots. But when you overthink, you start adding unnecessary twists, overloading backstories, and forcing complexity where it doesn't belong. The result? Your story becomes confusing and hard to follow. Consider Pix's famous 22 rules of storytelling. Rule number 4 says, simplify, focus, combine characters, hop over detours. You'll feel like you're losing valuable stuff, but it sets you free. This is where many storytellers struggle. They don't want to cut anything, but cutting can make your story stronger. Strategy: use the 3-act structure, a proven formula that keeps stories clear and engaging. Act 1 introduces the characters and conflict, Act 2 builds tension, and Act 3 brings resolution. This structure is simple but powerful. Overthinking often comes from a lack of direction, so having a framework helps keep you on track. Another trick is the post-it note method. Write down the key moments of your story on separate notes. Then, arrange them in order. If something feels off, move it around until the story flows better. This keeps you from getting bogged down in the small details of the plot and helps you see the big picture. Finally, test your story with a beta audience. Share your work with a small group of people and ask for honest feedback. Often, you're too close to the story to see where it's overcomplicated. Getting outside perspectives can help you streamline your plot and avoid unnecessary detours. If you're finding value in this content, don't forget to subscribe. We'll explore more tips and tricks in the following chapters to help you become a better storyteller. Chapter 4, From Flow to Stagnation, Why Your Story Needs Movement, Not Overthinking When You're Telling a Story. Flow is everything. Flow is that state where ideas come naturally, and the words almost seem to write themselves. But overthinking is the enemy of flow. It turns a smooth river of thoughts into a stagnant pond. Research from Harvard University suggests that flow states boost creativity by up to 500%. That's a huge number, and it shows why flow is critical to great storytelling. Think about it, have you ever read a story that felt stiff or robotic? That's probably the result of too much planning and not enough flow. Overanalyzing every scene can create something formulaic, making it hard for readers to stay engaged. A great way to stay in the flow is to use the Pomodoro technique. Set a timer for 25 minutes and write without stopping. Don't worry about mistakes, just keep writing. Then, take a 5-minute break. This process helps you stay in motion and prevents your brain from locking up with overthinking. Another strategy is free writing. Set a goal to write 500 words on your story without stopping to correct or edit. Free writing helps you bypass the inner critic and lets the ideas flow freely. Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way advocates for this in the form of morning pages, where you write whatever comes to mind for 3 pages each day. And remember, movement applies to your plot too. Don't get stuck in one scene for too long. Keep your story moving. A good rule of thumb is that something significant should happen in your story every 3-5 pages. If you find yourself bogged down, ask yourself, is this scene necessary to the overall movement of the story? Chapter 5, The Emotional Disconnect, How Overthinking Distances You from Your Audience. Storytelling is all about connecting with your audience on an emotional level. But overthinking can create distance. When you're too focused on getting the details right, you can lose sight of the bigger picture, making your audience feel something. In fact, according to a study in Psychology Today, people remember emotionally charged stories 22 times more than dry facts. This is why authenticity is so important in storytelling. Author Brené Brown, in her book Daring Greatly, talks about the power of vulnerability. She argues that when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we create deeper connections with others. Overthinking tends to push vulnerability aside because we're too focused on controlling the narrative. A good strategy to reconnect with your audience is to tell personal, relatable stories. If you're too focused on crafting the perfect narrative, you might miss opportunities to share something real. A story that's emotionally authentic will resonate far more than one that's perfectly polished but feels distant. Also, tap into universal emotions like love, fear, hope, or loss. Don't get bogged down in too many specifics that your audience can't relate to. Keep asking yourself, how does this story make me feel? If it doesn't stir something in you, it's unlikely to move your audience. Another great tip is to read your story out loud. When you do this, you'll quickly notice parts that feel emotionally flat. The tone of your voice will tell you if something is off. It's a simple yet effective way to catch areas where you've overthought the emotions out of your story. If you've enjoyed these insights and tips on storytelling, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. We'll continue exploring how to improve your craft and connect with your audience.